Hi everyone. I'm Helen from Susan's family. Today I'm bringing you the Cozy Critters, lamb version. It's divided into two main parts, the main part and the decorations. First, crochet the main part. Once completed, make the decorations and attach them. Let's start crocheting the main part. Begin with a chain stitch, then work in rounds for a section. After that, work back and forth. Let's take a look at the chart. In the chart, our plus number indicates the round number. The increases and decreases explanation column shows the stitch techniques needed for crocheting the current round, including increases and decreases. The total stitches column shows the total number of stitches after completing all stitches in the current round. The stitch techniques used include chain, CH, F double crochet, FB double crochet increase, and slip stitch. Next, please watch my demonstration of the specific crochet method. The yarn used for the main part here is special. This yarn has long fibers, making it hard to see the stitches when crocheting. I'll first demonstrate the crochet method using cotton yarn. Then explain the for using the corresponding yarn. You can learn the method first, or practice with easier to see yarn, and then use the corresponding yarn for crocheting once you've mastered it. I'm using random yarn colors here. For specific yarn, color schemes and hook sizes, please refer to the detail page of our product and paper instructions. First, let's cast on. The chart shows 3ch, which means to begin with a chain stitch. Then make 3 chains. Let's start with a chain stitch. Pick up the yarn with your right hand. Wrap the yarn around your left little finger. Pass it through between the middle finger and index finger. Pinch the yarn tail with your left thumb and middle finger. Pick up the crochet hook with your right hand. The hook moves between these 2 points. Position the hook underneath the yarn. Wrap the yarn counterclockwise. Pinch the crossing point of the loop with your left thumb and middle finger. Then position the hook to the left of the yarn. Wrap the yarn counterclockwise. Pull the yarn through the loop. Tighten the yarn tail. Note: keep the loop on the hook slightly loose. For easier crocheting later, this slip knot does not count as a stitch. You can also begin with a slip knot method. Cross the yarn tails. Then from underneath the loop, pull the yarn tail through. Then place the slip knot loop onto the crochet hook. Adjust slightly. Hang the yarn with your left hand using the previous method. Now begin crocheting chain stitches. Yarn over. Pull through. 1 chain stitch is done. On this chain stitch, pick up the V-shaped loop. Pick up both strands of the chain stitch. Place a stitch marker to mark it. Continue yarn over. Pull through. This is the second stitch. A total of 3 stitches need to be crocheted here. Crochet 1 more stitch. The starting chain is now completed. 1 braid here represents 1 stitch. The loop on the hook is not counted in the stitch count. The starting chain explanation is finished. Begin the first round. R1 is dow 3, 1 2 F, meaning start crocheting from the third stitch from the end. The number before F indicates how many double crochets to make. Here it means crochet 12 double crochets. First find the position of the third stitch from the end, which is actually the first chain stitch of the starting chain. Verify by counting from right to left. 1, 2, 3. Still this chain stitch. So we pick the chain space, where the stitch marker is. Work 1 double crochet, first the loop on the hook, which is picking this braid. Place a stitch marker to mark it. Pay attention not to include the yarn being crocheted. Then yarn over once. Insert into the corresponding position. Yarn over and draw through. There are 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. 2 loops remain. Continue to yarn over and draw through in once. Completed the double crochet. Here is the marker spot. The V-shaped loop is the stitch of the double crochet. 1 stitch represents 1 stitch. Continue to pick up the same position. Work 11 double crochets. I'll demonstrate the technique for double crochet again. Yarn over. Insert. Yarn over and draw through. Then yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. Repeat twice. Once. Twice. Complete the double crochet. Continue with 10 double crochets. One stitch. Two stitches. Three stitches. Nine stitches. 10 stitches. Plus the previous 2 stitches. A total of 12 double crochets completed. Check the stitch count after finishing. The stitch pattern in the chart is now completed. Remove the stitch marker at the insertion point. Finally, at the stitch of the first double crochet, Which is the position marked by the stitch marker? Work one slip stitch to join. Insert. Yarn over and pull through. Pull through all loops on the hook in once. Complete the slip stitch. The braid on the upper right here. Is the braid formed by the slip stitch? The slip stitch doesn't count as one stitch. You need to tighten its braid. Then tighten the loops on the hook. This makes the right side braid smaller. The slip stitch is not indicated in the form. When crocheting in rounds, always finish by joining with a slip stitch and tighten. The starting tail of the yarn is not handled yet. It can be used to distinguish the right and wrong sides. The side with the starting tail is the wrong side of the fabric. And the stitch texture is relatively blurry. The opposite side is the right side. Now the first round is complete. Next crochet round 2. R2 is 2CH, 12 DC2 in 1. DC2 in 1 means double crochet increase. The number before it indicates how many crochet that many double crochet increases. Here it means crochet 12 double crochet increases. Continue with the yarn from the previous round. First, make 2 turning chains as beginning chain. Here the turning chain doesn't count as one stitch, not included in the total stitch count. Then place a marker on the entire yarn loop on the hook. This way, after completing the corresponding stitches, the marker position will exactly be at the corresponding stitch position. Pick into the marker position from the previous round, where you joined with a slip stitch earlier. Crochet 1 DC2 in 1, which means making 2 double crochets in one position. One stitch. At this point the marker indicates the stitch position. Continue crocheting 2 stitches. Complete the double crochet increase. Here you can remove the marker. Then continue picking up the left stitch. Work double crochet 2 in 1. After completing, you'll need to make 10 more double crochet increases downward, all following the method of making 2 double crochets in each stitch. After completing the last double crochet increase, check the stitch count. Note that the turning chain doesn't count as one stitch. The total stitches for each round are indicated in the corresponding chart. I won't mention this again later. Finally, at the marked position, work a slip stitch to join. Insert. Yarn over and draw through. Pull through all loops on the hook in once. Complete the slip stitch, tighten the loop as well. The second round is complete. Work the third round next. Make 2 chains to begin. The following chart is FFV X12. The parentheses here indicate a group. The number after X indicates the number of times to repeat the pattern. Work 1 double crochet first. Remember to mark before crocheting. Before working each stitch, pick up the loop and mark it. I won't remind you repeatedly afterward. Insert into the marked stitch of the previous round and crochet accordingly. The stitch marker can be removed after completing. Next, work 1 double crochet 2 in 1. FFV is completed. Let me demonstrate again. Work 1 double crochet first. Then work 1 double crochet 2 in 1. This is the second time. Repeat FFV 10 more times. All following the method of 1 double crochet 2 in 1. Finally, pick the marked position and join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The third round is complete. Now work on the fourth round. Chain 2 to begin. Crochet the stitch pattern inside the parentheses. Work 1 double crochet first. Then work 1 double crochet 2 in 1. Followed by 1 double crochet. FFV F is complete. Let me demonstrate again. 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet 2 in 1. One double crochet. This is the second time. Then continue repeating the stitch pattern inside the parentheses. Finish crocheting the required number of times. After completing all, slip stitch. Pull tight. Round 4 is done. Move on to round 5. Work even this round. Chain 2 as beginning chain. Then pick up stitches 1 stitch to another for double crochet. Check the stitch count after finishing, same as the previous round. Then slip stitch at the marked position. Pull tight. Round 5 is completed. For the remaining part, work back and forth, meaning no slip stitch join at the end. Continue the numbering from previous. Next is row 6. Chain 2 as beginning chain. This beginning chain corresponds to the previous round's beginning chain. The chart shows a turn, indicating the fabric needs to be turned. Turn counterclockwise. Then pick up stitches to the left. Work the corresponding number of double crochets. Continue all the way to the position before the previous round's beginning chain, which is the position marked by the stitch marker. Complete the marked position. At this point, this row is finished. No slip stitch join is needed, creating an opening at both ends. Row 6 is completed. The stitch marker can be removed here. Then work row 7. Using the same method, make 2 chain stitches as beginning chain. Then turn the fabric, starting from the first stitch at the edge downward. Work double crochets correspondingly in each stitch. Continue all the way to the position next to the previous row's beginning chain, which is right before the opening. At the previous row's beginning chain, no need to crochet. The stitch count for this row is identical to the previous row. Row 7 is now completed. Continue crocheting the remaining rows using the same method as row 7. Color changes are needed for the last few rows. When counting row numbers or round numbers here, count each raised texture. Each raised texture represents one round or one row. The swatch now has 7 raised textures. When the yarn runs out while crocheting, you can use an incomplete double crochet to join the yarn. I'll demonstrate the method using a swatch. Please pay attention, always join the yarn on a double crochet. First work an incomplete double crochet, yarn over once. Insert the hook. Pull through. Then yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops, leaving 2 loops on the hook. That's an incomplete double crochet. Then take the new yarn. Leave a little yarn tail. Pull through, completing the double crochet, and completing the join. Tie a knot with both yarn tails on the wrong side of the fabric to secure them. Leave the yarn tails on the wrong side for now. Continue crocheting normally downward. This is the method for joining yarn. I'll demonstrate the color change method using a swatch. After completing the row with the corresponding color, first chain 1 to secure. Leave a little yarn tail. Cut the yarn. Then take the new color. Place the yarn end from the previous row's finish on the right side. Then insert into the edge stitch of the previous row. Hold the new yarn with the left hand. Leave a little yarn tail. Yarn over and pull through. Chain 2 to begin. Crochet accordingly downward. When crocheting, you can place both yarn tails above the hook. Weave in the ends as you go along. Or tie them off and leave them in place, then hide them into the fabric later. This is the color change method. After finishing all, cut the yarn. Then tuck the tail into the fabric. Here I demonstrate the method of weaving in ends. Place the yarn on the wrong side of the fabric. Weave it in along the stitches. Weave in for several stitches, then trim the remaining yarn tail. Handle the other yarn tails using the same method. Now the crocheting method for the main part is complete. Next I'll use the original yarn to explain points to pay attention to during the crocheting process. First is casting on. The yarn is hard to see here. Pay more attention while crocheting. Crochet slower. First follow the method demonstrated with cotton yarn. Chain cast on. Then make 3 chains. After completing the first chain, you can feel the loop below the hook is the first chain stitch. You can feel a small hole by touching it. Place a stitch marker on the first stitch. Place it directly into the hole. Continue crocheting chain stitches. 2 stitches. 3 stitches. Let's feel the chain stitches again. When touching continuously, there's a bump between every 2 chain stitches. The indented hole position is where the chain stitch is. Now the casting on is complete. Next pick up the hole position of the first chain stitch. Crochet 12 double crochets. Since it's hard to find the stitch later, mark each stitch here. First place a marker on the loop on your hook. Clip in a stitch marker. To easily distinguish the marker spot, on our first marker, clip another marker. So the stitch position with 2 markers is the first stitch. Pick down to the stitch marker on the first chain. Work 1 double crochet. As you crochet, feel and work slowly. Crochet slowly. Yarn over. Insert. Yarn over and pull through. If you want it looser, enlarge the loop. Conversely, pull the yarn shorter. Check or feel it. There are 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. Two loops remain. Yarn over and draw through in once. This completes 1 double crochet. The position marked by the stitch marker is the stitch of this double crochet. Feel the marked spot with your hands. It's a small dent. The lower left of the dent is awkward lumps. This is the double crochet stitch post. The upper right is softer. This is the double crochet stitch. Place a stitch marker on the loop on the hook. Then at the same insertion point, work 1 double crochet. Before working each subsequent stitch, pick up the entire loop and place a stitch marker. The second marker position is the second double crochet stitch. Continue to work the remaining stitches. Now there are 3 stitch markers, meaning 3 stitches have been worked. After completing, check the stitch count. Simply count the number of stitch markers here. The position with 2 stitch markers is the first stitch. Then remove the stitch marker from the previous insertion point. At this point, the stitch pattern in the chart is completed, down to the position with 2 stitch markers. Join with a slip stitch. Insert into the chain space with the stitch marker. Insert the hook and crochet. After completing, pull tight as well. At this point, the first round is complete. To make it convenient for checking the round count later, place a stitch marker in any one stitch on this side. Continue to crochet round 2. Chain 2 as beginning chain. Then work into the position with 2 stitch markers underneath. Work DC2 in 1. This round still requires marking every stitch. Place 2 stitch markers at the first stitch position. Crochet correspondingly. finish crocheting the corresponding position of the stitch marker, the stitch marker underneath can be removed. Pick up the stitch marker positions from the previous round downward. Work DC2 in 1 evenly. When reaching the position with 2 stitch markers, check the stitch count at this point. The stitch count in the chart is completed. Then at the first stitch, which is the position with 2 stitch markers, join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. This completes round 2. Similarly, mark any one stitch in this round. You can feel it here. Mark one stitch above the previous round's marker position. Convenient for later checking. The following round 3 uses the same method. After finishing the beginning chain, refer to the chart for the corresponding stitch patterns. Place 2 stitch markers at the first stitch position. Place 1 stitch marker after each stitch thereafter. Below where you completed the corresponding stitch, you can remove the stitch markers after finishing. Once you're more comfortable with crocheting, you don't need to mark every stitch. For example, mark every 3 stitches, or mark every 5 stitches. Here I'll demonstrate round 3, using the method of marking every 5 stitches. Start with a beginning chain. Then follow the chart to crochet 4 stitches. Still place 2 markers at the first stitch. Now you've completed 4 stitches. Mark the 5th stitch position below. Continue using the same method afterward. Crochet 4 stitches and complete. Note that the stitch you just finished is the 5th stitch position. From this stitch, crochet 4 more stitches forward. Mark the next stitch after completing. On the left side of the previous stitch marker, up to the current marker position, that's 5 stitches. You can also feel it, or part the fibers. To see the general braid pattern, continue crocheting using this method afterward. And if the completed stitch pattern before is unclear what stitch was made, you can feel it. There's only one firm stitch column, which means one stitch was made. That's one completed stitch. Below in a chain space, pulling through to create 2 stitch columns. That's an increase. After finishing the last stitch marker of the previous round, remove the stitch marker down to the first stitch marker position at the second stitch. Now check the stitch count. Starting from the second stitch marker on the left side, there are 5 stitches between stitch markers. Let's count the number of stitch markers. There are 7 stitch markers here, which means up to this marker position, totaling 35 stitches, plus the last stitch crocheted. making 36 stitches in total, matching the stitch count on the chart. Finally, at the position of 2 stitch markers, that is, at the first stitch, join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The third round is complete. Mark each completed round afterward. Similarly, mark above the previously marked position. If stitch markers run out later, use other colors for marking. Cut a piece of yarn. Then from the position needing marking, pick approximately the corresponding stitch. Draw the yarn through. Then tie a knot with the yarn tail. This is the method of marking with yarn tails. For the fourth round afterward, you can crochet following the third round's marking method. If you really can't find the exact position, we can work within a specific area. Crochet the corresponding number of stitches. Slight deviation in insertion position within the corresponding area is fine. Here I'll demonstrate the method using the fourth round. First, make the beginning chain. In the previous round, there were 5 stitches between my stitch markers. So I just need to pick 5 insertion points between them. Following the stitch pattern in the chart, complete this area first. Meanwhile, during this round of crocheting, still mark every 3 or every 5 stitches. I'll continue marking every 5 stitches as I crochet. Work 1 double crochet first. Always mark the first stitch here. And use 2 stitch markers to distinguish it. Crochet 1 double crochet increase downward. Insert the hook into the small hole. Pay attention to the small hole near the fabric edge. Part the fibers to check. You can faintly see a braid-like texture. Continue crocheting 1 double crochet downward. Then mark it. Crochet 1 double crochet in the adjacent stitch. When you reach the stitch marker position later, correspondingly make a double crochet increase here. In this end area, Pick up 5 stitch positions to insert the hook. Repeat this process afterward. Continue crocheting. Insert the hook into roughly corresponding small holes. You can also check the stitch count by feeling the small holes. Take it slow while crocheting. The insertion position can also be roughly matched. Complete the corresponding number of stitches. Now you've reached the starting position. Let's check the stitch count. If you make a mistake in stitch technique while crocheting, it's okay, as long as the final stitch count matches the total stitches. Slip stitch at the beginning position going down. Pull tight. The 4th round is done. Once you get more comfortable with crocheting, you can also feel it. The fabric will have a bumpy texture. The raised parts that feel firm represent 1 round. The dents are the chain spaces. We can also count the chain spaces. One chain space represents 1 round. Since everyone's tension varies, after completing the 4th round, compare the dimensions with the pattern chart. If the dimensions differ significantly, it's recommended to adjust your tension and recrochet. For the 5th round, work even without increasing or decreasing. The stitch marker positions of the upper and lower rounds will correspond exactly. Then follow the working back and forth method. All rounds are worked even without increases or decreases. You can mark the first stitch of every row and every round. When working back and forth, end the row at the first marked stitch of the previous row, indicating the completion of a row. If the yarn runs out while crocheting, you can join yarn at an incomplete stitch. The method is identical to the cotton yarn demonstration. When changing colors, refer to the cotton yarn color change method. Finally, complete and fasten off the yarn, and hide all yarn tails on the wrong side of the fabric. This concludes the crocheting method for the original yarn. At this point the main part is completely explained. Next, make the decorations. Divide it into pom-poms, hanging loops, ears and horns. Make and attach them separately. Let's start with the pom-pom. Using the foundation chain method. Then crocheting in rounds. New stitch techniques include X single crochet, V single crochet increase, and a single crochet decrease. Now watch my demonstration. For easier viewing here, I'm still using cotton yarn for demonstration. You can learn the method first. Then use the corresponding yarn to crochet later. First, make a foundation chain. Chain 2. Mark the first completed stitch. For the original yarn, simply pick up the chain space to mark. Continue with one single crochet, starting point completed, then insert the hook into the second to last stitch, which is the marked stitch. Correspondingly make 6 single crochets. Start with the first stitch. Before crocheting, pick up the entire loop, and place a stitch marker. Then insert the hook. Yarn over and draw through. Now there are 2 loops on the hook. Then yarn over and draw through all loops on the hook in once. This is a single crochet. The braid on the upper right is its stitch, and also the position marked by the stitch marker. I'll demonstrate again. Pay attention, if you can't find the position with the original yarn, just mark every stitch. Same as placing a marker before picking up the loop. I'm using cotton yarn for crocheting here, makes it easier to see the stitch position, so I only mark the first stitch, no more markers after that, depends on your actual situation. Insert into the previous stitch's insertion point. Yarn over and draw through. Then yarn over and pull through both loops on the hook. Complete the single crochet. Continue with 4 single crochets. Check the stitch count after completing. The original yarn just goes through the small space. Then at the first stitch marker position, join with a slip stitch. You can remove the marker from the previous insertion point here. Pull tight. The slip stitch at the end isn't shown in the chart. But when crocheting in rounds, always finish by joining with a slip stitch. Pull tight after completing. The first round is complete. When using the original yarn to crochet, remember to mark after each round, convenient for checking the round number later. Move on to crochet the second round. Make 1 beginning chain to start. This beginning chain isn't shown in the chart. When crocheting single crochets in rounds, always start with 1 beginning chain as the turning chain. Then pick up the marked stitch, work a single crochet increase, which means make 2 single crochets into the same stitch. Remember to mark before crocheting. When using the original yarn to crochet, depending on the situation, you can mark every stitch, or mark every 3 or 5 stitches. Choose according to your actual situation. When marking the first stitch, you still need to use 2 stitch markers, convenient for differentiation. I'm still only marking the first stitch. One stitch. 2 stitches. Complete the single crochet increase. Continue picking up stitches downward. Work 5 single crochet increases evenly. Check the stitch count after completion. Then pick up the first stitch, and join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The second round is complete. Continue to crochet the third round. Make one beginning chain to start, then work one single crochet correspondingly. Followed by one single crochet increase. This completes one group of stitch patterns in parentheses. Continue crocheting with this method. Finally join with a slip stitch in the first stitch. Pull tight. The third round is complete. Rounds 4 through 5 afterward. The chart shows even 1/8x, totaling 18 stitches. Make one beginning chain to start. Then pick up stitches evenly to work single crochets. Check the stitch count after completing. Then pick up the first stitch, and join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The fourth round is complete, followed by the fifth round. The method is identical to the fourth round. Work even. Refer to the chart for crocheting. Pay attention to make a beginning chain at the start. Finish with a slip stitch at the end. Complete and move on to the sixth round. Here I'll demonstrate using this swatch. Start by making a beginning chain, then work one single crochet. Followed by a single crochet decrease. First, insert into the adjacent stitch to make an incomplete single crochet. Thread it through. Yarn over and draw through. 2 loops remain on the hook. This is an incomplete single crochet. Continue with an adjacent incomplete single crochet. Insert, yarn over and draw through. Now 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and draw through all loops in once. Complete the single crochet decrease. Move on to work one single crochet. Complete the stitch pattern within the parentheses. Continue downward with one single crochet. Work a single crochet decrease on adjacent stitches. First insert into 2 adjacent stitches. Make an incomplete single crochet. 1, 2. Finally yarn over and draw through all loops on the hook. Complete the single crochet decrease. Move on to work one single crochet. Completed another group. Repeat this process. Continue crocheting. Complete the last stitch. Join with a slip stitch in the first stitch. Pull tight. Round 6 is completed. The rest please continue following the chart. After completing the second to last round, stuff a little fiber fill inside. Here I'll demonstrate the method using a swatch. First fluff up the fiber fill before stuffing. Adjust the amount as needed. Too much will make it stiff. Too little won't hold shape. Then continue with the final round. After completing all, cut the yarn leaving a sewing tail. First secure with a chain stitch. Then leave a 10 cm yarn tail. Cut the yarn. Pull tight. Whenever you need to leave a yarn tail at the end, repeat this process. That's how to crochet the pom-pom. Just crochet another pom-pom using the same method. Next, crochet the hanging string. Use the method of holding 2 strands to chain. Here I'll still demonstrate with cotton yarn. You'll need 2 yarn tails for crocheting. A skein has 2 yarn tails. One on the surface. One in the center. Pick up both yarn tails. Then leave about 15 centimeters. Tie them together with a slip knot. Place it on the hook. Next, hold one strand with your left hand. Lay the other strand over the hook from bottom to top. Yarn over and pull through. Continue laying the lower strand over the hook. Then yarn over and pull through. Repeat this process. I'll work a few more stitches. This is the method for holding the yarn to crochet chain stitches. Continue downward using this technique. Crochet to the length indicated on the chart. Once you reach the proper length, leave a 15 cm yarn tail, and cut the yarn. Then pull the loop on the hook through. Tie both yarn tails together to secure. The hanging loop is now crocheted. Attach the hanging loop to the main part of the hat. Use the reserved yarn tail from the hanging loop. Tie a knot at both pointed ends of the hat to secure. You can use a crochet hook or sewing needle. Pull out one of the reserved yarn tails. Tie a double knot with the yarn tail. Weave in the yarn for a few stitches inside the fabric. Simply weave in the yarn through the chain space of the hanging loop. Repeat this process to weave in the other yarn tail as well. Complete this part on your own. That concludes the installation of the hanging loop. Next, attach a pom-pom to the other end of the hanging loop. Use the reserved yarn from the pom-pom. Sew a few stitches through the hanging loop to secure it. Simultaneously sew up the opening of the pom-pom. There's no specific method required. Just make sure it's secure and neat. The yarn tail of the hanging loop can be threaded into the pom-pom. Fasten and weave in ends once completed. Trim any remaining tails. This completes the pom-pom installation. Install the other one using the same method. Complete this part on your own. Next, crochet the ears. The method is similar to the pom-pom, only the stitch count and stitch patterns differ slightly. No new stitch techniques are used. Refer directly to the chart. Complete crocheting the ears. Leave a 15 cm yarn tail for sewing after completing. Proceed with the attachment after finishing. First, check the attachment position. Place the split side of the hat main part at the back. Then align the front side without splits. Fold the hat front and back in half. Center at the folded edge on one side. At the top position, attach the ears. You can adjust the ear position according to your preference. Find the right position. Start attaching downward. I'll use this swatch to demonstrate. My swatch position is arbitrary, mainly demonstrating the method. Fold the ear along one side of the seam. Then the bottom end. Sew it to the corresponding position on the hat main part. Here the overlapping part of the ear bottom and hat main part. Thread the yarn needle. There's no specific requirement for the sewing method, just make it secure and neat. Only sew the bottom part here. Keep the top part open. Pay attention not to sew into the back of the hat. Pick up the corresponding front position to insert the hook. Then make a few knots with the thread. And weave in the ends into the fabric. You can weave in several stitches for extra security. Now one ear is attached. Attach the other one using the same method, symmetrically. Complete it on your own. After finishing the attachment, brush blush on the inside of the ear. The color isn't very noticeable on my swatch. Just achieve the desired effect in your actual work. Now the ear section is done. Next, crochet the horns. Use cotton yarn for crocheting here. Start with an adjustable magic ring, crocheting outwards in rounds counterclockwise, using X-stitch single crochet technique. Watch my demonstration now. To make it easier to watch, I'll demonstrate with a different color. Pick up the yarn tail with your right hand, wrap it twice around your left index finger. Pinch the crossing point of the loop. Take the loop. Hold the yarn in place with your left hand. Transfer the loop between your left thumb and middle finger. Pick up the crochet hook with your right hand, insert into the loop. Yarn over and pull through. Secure with one chain stitch. This completes the adjustable magic ring. Move on to the first round. Make one chain as your beginning chain. This beginning chain is not marked in the chart. When crocheting single crochets in rounds, always make one chain as your beginning chain, and this beginning chain doesn't count as one stitch. Then pick up the stitch loop to work X-stitch single crochets. You can mark it before crocheting. Insert the hook into the loop. Then place the hook above the yarn. Pull the yarn through. Yarn over and draw through both loops on the hook. Complete one X-stitch single crochet. Let me demonstrate again. Insert into the loop. Place the hook above the yarn. Pull the yarn through. Yarn over and draw through in once. Completed another X-stitch single crochet. Continue down to pick up loops and work 4 X-stitch single crochets. The entire horn uses the X-stitch single crochet technique. I'll just call it single crochet from now on. Continue. 1 stitch. 2 stitches. 3 stitches. 4 stitches. Weave in the ends after completing. First, gently pull the starting tail. You can see a loop moving. Then from the side of the yarn tail, pull the moving loop outward. This way one loop is closed, one loop left. Directly pull tight the starting tail. This way the loop is secured. Pick up to the stitch marker and crochet a slip stitch to join. Here the slip stitch is also not marked in the chart. When crocheting in rounds, always finish by joining with a slip stitch. After completing, pull tight. The first round is complete. Move on to crochet the second round. Make one chain as your beginning chain. Then pick up stitches and work single crochet increases correspondingly, which means making 2 X-stitch single crochets in the same position. If you can easily find the first stitch, you don't need to mark it anymore. Continue crocheting all the way down to finish this round. After completing, check the stitch count. Meanwhile, we can also find the first stitch by counting stitches from back to front. This method helps locate the starting point. Insert into the stitch. Finish with a slip stitch to join. Tighten after completing. The second round is complete. Crochet the third round downward. Work even without increasing or decreasing. Make one chain as your beginning chain, then pick up stitches, and work single crochets correspondingly. After finishing, the fabric will curve inward. Turn the neat stitch texture side outward, with yarn tails facing inward. Then locate the first single crochet stitch. You can also count backward from the end. Work one slip stitch to join. Pull tight. The third round is complete. Continue to crochet the fourth round. Make one chain as your beginning chain. Then pick up stitches, and work one single crochet correspondingly. One single crochet increase. Complete the stitch pattern within the parentheses. I'll demonstrate again. Pick up stitches separately. Work one single crochet. One single crochet increase. Another group is completed. Follow this method or refer to the chart. Continue crocheting. Slip stitch into the first stitch at the end. Pull tight. The fourth round is complete. For the remaining rounds, just follow the chart. The chart shows our 9 are 1 0 below. Work even for 30 single crochets. Starting from the 9th round, one stitch corresponds to one single crochet. Continue all the way to the 10th round. Each round has exactly 30 stitches. Remember to work a beginning chain at the start of each round. Finish with a slip stitch and pull tight. All single crochets are worked as X-stitch single crochets. When encountering this format later, the meaning expressed is the same. Please refer to the chart. Complete the remaining rounds. After finishing, leave a 30 cm yarn tail for sewing. At this point, the crocheting of the horns is explained. Follow the same method. Crochet another horn. The horns are completed. Proceed to the next step for attaching. Here, I'm demonstrating with a small swatch. Place it on the inner side of the ear. The side with slip stitch marks, that is, the side with small horizontal lines. Place it behind. You can also use the reserved yarn tail to identify. Position it at the very back. Then stuff appropriately with filling. Adjust the amount as needed. Too much will make it hard. Too little will lose its shape, as long as it supports the fabric, and looks firm and full. You can stuff partially first. Then continue stuffing, when sewing leaves a small gap. Thread the yarn needle. No specific sewing method required. Just secure and neat. When only a small opening remains, stuff a bit more filling inside. Once it fits properly, finish the remaining stitches. Once done, make a few knots. Then hide the thread inside the fabric. You can hide it a few times for safety. This way, one horn is attached. Attach the other symmetrically using the same method. Complete it on your own. Now the decoration part is explained. Finally, tidy up the hat. During the process, some fluff may get trapped inside the fabric. We can brush the fluff with a brush. Pick out the fluff pressed underneath. Don't brush too hard. Gently lift the fluff. You can also use a crochet hook or yarn needle to pick up the fluff. As long as the effect looks pleasing, up to this point, the entire hat making process is complete. If you have any unclear parts during the crocheting process, don't hesitate to join our Facebook group to get supports. Susan's Family, supporting your handwork experience, sharing the joy of life. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.